When is it okay to quote your favourite Nazis and to refer to what they've said and compare other people to Nazis? My name is Chris and this is Oversight Examined, and today we're looking at Facebook and Instagram's policies around dangerous organisations and individuals. So what happened in this case? Well, it starts several years ago in 2018, and somebody had posted a quote which they attributed to Joseph Goebbels. And Goebbels was the Minister of Propaganda back in Nazi Germany. Now, he didn't put a photograph, didn't put any Nazi symbols, but he did say blah 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 from Joseph Goebbels. And this seemed to be perfectly fine. A lot of his friends replied, nobody complained, nothing happened. But then 2 years later, Facebook's memory feature reminded him of this post and said, hey, do you remember what you said 2 years ago? Why don't you repost that? So he did. And as soon as he posted it, Facebook deleted it. And I think there was probably an AI, an artificial intelligence, that had recognized Joseph Goebbels' name and referred it to a human moderator who then decided that it had to go. So they deleted it under the Dangerous Organizations and Individuals policy. So what about those dang orgs, as we used to refer to them? Well, dangerous organizations, dangerous individuals are those which cause harm, as the name explains. And generally, they're not state actors. The Nazi Party, the Nazi government of Germany is quite unusual because it's actually a government. Generally, these are organizations that are below the radar. So terrorist groups, hate groups, organized crime even, the kind of people that are a danger to society. And they're usually current as well, not historical. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition to be on the list, for example. Now, this list is quite a contentious thing, and Facebook doesn't publish their list. They keep it secret. Now, I've seen arguments on internal discussion boards within Facebook where people are saying, why is this organization not on the list? And of course, you're also going to get people saying, but these people here are freedom fighters, they're not terrorists. So you can imagine if that was a global conversation and everybody in the world had their say about what was on the list. So I can understand that an organization obsessed with secrecy like Facebook is not going to publish that list. It's just too much trouble, too much argument. And then the other question is, well, who decides what's on the list anyway? Do we want a private organization keeping a list of who's bad for society and who isn't? Or do we rely on somebody else externally? Well, actually, we used to do both. Facebook had a list, but it wasn't definitive. We would also look at, for example, the State Department's list of official terrorist organizations. So once you've made your list, what then? Well, obviously, it's okay to talk about the existence of these organizations or to make fun of them. So education, satire, political commentary, these kinds of things are okay, and you'll see people online building careers out of commentary about these organizations. But if you want to do that, you have to be very clear about what your intention is, because I'm seeing 100 of these per hour. I can't read your mind. I can't read what your friends reply. I can only read what you actually wrote. So you have to be very clear that you're not supporting or praising or representing these people. And this idea of praise, support and representation, PSR, this is central to Facebook and Instagram's policies around dangerous organizations and individuals. Basically, you are not allowed to say, I've joined the mafia. You're not allowed to wave your ISIS flags around without explaining why. You're not allowed to repeat any message which you say comes from any one of these people or organizations, even if it didn't. So, for example, let's say I'm a vegetarian and I want to promote my vegetarian message, and every day I'm putting quotes from famous vegetarians, and we've got the Dalai Lama, and then the next day I'm thinking, well, Hitler was popular and he's a vegetarian, so I put a quote from Hitler about why he's a vegetarian. What I'm doing there is I am aligning myself with him, with everything about him. So I would have to say, Adolf Hitler was a terrible human being, but even he didn't eat animals. And then that would be okay. But I have to clearly distance myself from that person. So let's do some critique of what we're seeing in front of us here. And the first thing is that this post was only deleted 2 years later after it was reposted. And I'm guessing that there was an AI, an artificial intelligence, involved in that decision at the time. Until then, the guy's friends were all happy with it, nobody complained, and it's like he lived in a little echo chamber of his own creation where this kind of quote was okay. But then we've decided to apply the rules to an older post, even though the rules might have changed. And this happens a lot at election time. Facebook gets very worried about defending democracy, and suddenly it enforces content moderation more strictly or slightly differently because of the context at the time. And that might make sense, but if we're doing it to old posts as well, well, now we're into the world where we are rewriting history. People have written books about what happens when you start rewriting history. And people have burned books because they don't like the history that was there. They want to get rid of it and replace it with their own. So we're entering a very, very dangerous territory here when we start rewriting the past, deleting things that today we've decided we don't approve of. I'll give you an extreme example of this. I was doing my job one day for Facebook and I saw a post and I decided it was okay under the rules at that time and I left it there. And then the next day they changed the rules, and the day after that my auditor reviewed my decision and told me I'd got it wrong because now there was a new rule. So this is a whole can of worms that we're opening up when we start going back and applying today's rules to yesterday. Now let's not forget also that the Nazi Party used to go back through the historical records to find evidence that certain people were not fit to live in their modern Germany. They applied their new rules to ancient history. And once you start going down the path of revisiting the past, then you're on a very slippery slope indeed. Now, our user said that he didn't want to glorify the Nazis or align himself with them. He was actually trying to say that Donald Trump was like the Nazis, and all his friends understood that. And if you're living in an echo chamber where only people like yourself are listening to what you're saying, that may be true. But on the wider internet, whatever you've said is going to be seen by just about anybody in the world. And for a content moderator who doesn't have time to investigate your personal life and see who your friends are, all he knows is that you quoted the Nazis. You aligned yourself with the Nazis. Even if the quote wasn't authentic, you still have quoted a Nazi. So what was the decision on this case? Well, the board ruled that Facebook had done the wrong thing by deleting it because it didn't actually support the Nazis. The guy was okay to make this post because his friends understood the context that it was supposed to be a critique of Donald Trump. What the board haven't done is to address this question of PSR, praise, support and representation, and what the rules should be for somebody who's making 100 decisions an hour, or for an AI that doesn't understand the context and can't look and see what your friends think. Now, the board have also commented that actually the rules are not very clear. The user doesn't know who's on the list of dangerous organizations and who isn't. They don't know what's okay and what isn't, what PSR is or how that works. It's all a bit of a mess, and they have said that Facebook needs to clarify this, make things a little bit easier for people to respect the rules, which makes an awful lot of sense. So there we go. Interesting decision. I've tried to keep my personal opinions out of it, but I'd love to hear yours. Go down into the comments section there. Tell me what you think. Did the board make the right decision or not? Was this a good one or a bad one? And while you're there, give us a thumbs up, a like and a subscribe. We'll see you in the next one. I'm going to go off and start researching that now, and I look forward to seeing you next week. You really want to do one more thing?
Yes.
And one more thing. I mentioned that I'd seen internal discussions at Facebook where people are saying, why is this group not being deleted from Facebook, not being banned? And this was a group called Britain First, who at the time were they were spreading propaganda about immigrants and non-white people in the UK. And I used to see this stuff every fucking day, and it never broke the rules. It was always right on the edge. They knew how to play the game. And I could see the effect it was having and the intention, but I could not delete the stuff. I had to leave it there. And then one day I saw this discussion and somebody pointed out, hey, you know the leaders of this group, well, they've been convicted of hate crimes already in the courts in the UK. According to our own rules, they're now a hate group and they shouldn't be allowed on our website, or you shouldn't be allowed to praise them or support them or represent them. And this conversation goes on for months. People in Menlo Park are making excuses and avoiding making a decision. And eventually they give up and they make a public announcement. Britain First is now being banned from Facebook because they have broken our rules so many times. And I looked at that and I thought, no, they haven't. I'm the guy who was enforcing the rules and they never broke them. They were always right just on the borderline. They were banned because the leaders had been convicted of hate crimes, but Facebook lied to the public, to the press, to their shareholders, to everybody about what was going on. And this is why when we're looking at these board decisions and Facebook's interactions with the board, we have to be very, very careful and look very, very closely to see if Facebook is telling the truth. Anyway, I've been Chris. This has been Oversight Examined. I'll see you next week.